let's talk about everything that I made in 2025. Hello, my name is Emily Crow from The Cozy Crow, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sitting on the floor. I'm surrounded by piles of things because today I'm going to be talking about everything that I made, knit and crochet, and a little bit of felting too in 2025. We're going to start off talking about all my statistics for my making for the year, and then we're going to move into talking about all the things I made on a month-by-month basis. I do have a podcast that has been coming out fairly monthly for the past year, and so that made it really easy to go through my notes and pick out things. But this is a really good overview on all the things that I made. I can talk about the patterns and the dyers for the yarns that I really loved, and maybe some key points on each of the different items, talk about my favorite makes of the year as well. So let's jump right into it. We'll say I have a new baby. He is with dad right now. I'm really hoping that I can get this filmed in one go, but if not, if there are some weird cuts, that is why, but we're doing our best over here, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about all the things that I made this year.
Hi, so I'm editing this, and I didn't realize while I was filming, but I totally forgot a project, and it's actually kind of an important one because it is a pair of socks, my most made item, and it is a design I made. I don't know how I forgot it. I think it's because I don't have it in my possession at the moment. It is currently with some yarn dyers as they are going to different trunk shows and whatnot. And I just totally spaced. I didn't have it in my notes in my podcast because it was in the news section of my podcast whenever I talked about it because it was a new pattern. You'll see little asterisks of me changing some numbers in my stats for this pattern, and then I'm going to film a little segment talking about this pattern, and we're going to just kind of squeeze it into this video, and you're going to pretend like it's not totally random. I wanted to address why some of these numbers are not going to be the same on the screen as they are when I'm actually speaking about them because I forgot a project. Blame the newly postpartum, newborn haze, mom brain. Thank you.
For statistics, I wrote everything out. I made a total of 57 items, knit and crochet, and then one felted piece. I wasn't sure if I should include it in here or not. I had 51 knit pieces and then 6 crocheted pieces. If we break everything down by the type of item that I made, my top category, no surprise if you have been here before, but I made 26 pairs of socks. Quite a few of those were baby socks or child socks, but 26 pairs of socks this year. That's like a sock every week to make a pair every other week. That's wild. Oh my goodness, thinking about it that way. The next category of largest items is toys. I made 12 gnomes and 1 snake, so 13 total like toy type items. I had 10 accessories that I made this year, 4 hats, 3 pairs of mitts or mittens, 1 shawl, 1 cowl, and 1 bandana. I had 5 home type items, so that includes 2 blankets, 1 book sleeve, 1 like tablecloth covering type of thing, and 1 basket. And then finally, I made 3 garments, all of which were sweaters. And I have some items that are, again, for kids or babies, some for adults, some that didn't necessarily have a recipient that I made to make. And so not all garments are created equal, of course. Knitting an adult-sized garment is different than knitting a baby-sized garment, for example. But that's how I classified everything. We'll talk about everything in greater detail when we get to all the specific items. But I also wanted to look at who the recipients were for my items. A lot of times I make things for myself or just for fun. I don't necessarily have a recipient, but it's nice to see when I made something intended for somebody else or made in a different size than mine to give as a gift. So when we look at all the things, I had 8 items that were for my daughter, Georgia, who is 5. I had 4 items that are for my son, Arthur, who is a newborn. I had 4 other gifts that I made for friends or extended family, and then 1 item for my husband. Everything else was either intended for me or it was made in a size that works for me because I was like testing it or making something for fun. I didn't necessarily have a recipient in mind, I just made it. And then finally, if we're looking at the purpose of these makes, like I said, I do a lot of making for fun. 30 objects that I made this year were just for fun, just because It was something I wanted to make. I had 7 test knits that I completed in 2025. I had 11 items that were made from my own design, whether that was something I designed this year or something I had designed previously that I was making again, and I had 9 items that were included in vlogs this year. So there's a quick look at all the things I made statistics wise. If there's anything that you want more information on, let me know down below, because I'd love to kind of crunch some numbers and look at some more details about these makes. But that was kind of an overarching view that I thought would be really helpful if you're interested in statistics. But now let's move into the actual items that I made, and we're gonna start with January. January was a pretty big month for me because I was prepping a pattern release, well, a couple pattern releases, but there's one thing I was prepping for Valentine's Day, so I spent a lot of January doing that. I was also prepping an online seminar as well as a pattern bundle to go with that seminar that I did as part of the Knit Your Wardrobe Summit that was hosted by Hortense of Knitting with Chopsticks. And so I had a lot of administrative type makes. I have a gajillion baby socks to share with you as I was just like working up some of these patterns. We'll start with the Sock Geometry Basic Sock Bundle sock patterns. So this sock pattern bundle is for fingering weight yarn, and I have toe up and cuff down versions of both short row heels and heel flap and gusset socks, made to measure for baby all the way up through adult extra large, as well as a tube sock option for sizes baby up to adult extra large in both toe up and cuff down versions with some ribbed modifications included. So this Sock Geometry Basic Sock Bundle uses some math on my end mostly to size all of these socks from different angles, different directions, different constructions, so that as a basic sock knitter, you can have all the tools you need in these patterns to make a really well-fitting sock for different sized people. So I'm really, really proud of that sock bundle, and I'm really proud of that seminar video. I have plans to adapt it and put it on my YouTube channel sometime, hopefully this winter, spring. I have the footage ready to go, and it shouldn't take too much editing, but I just have a lot of other things going on. So if you're not able to participate in the Knit Your Wardrobe Summit, a version of that video that's a little bit stripped down will be available to you, coming eventually. So here are the 4 pairs of socks I knit for that. And you'll see I color-coded different portions of the sock to make it really easy to identify. So I've got some ribbed socks that are tube socks. I've got just stockinette tube socks. I've got heel flap and gusset. And I've also got short row heel socks. So this is really where the color coding is super helpful, I feel like, shaping wise. Honestly, the coolest part about knitting socks is the geometry of it and how you can make a 3D object by doing a bunch of different 2D shapes. Super, super cool. Knitting socks is not as hard as you think once you kind of understand the shaping and how it creates that like heel pocket that you're looking for. That's honestly the hardest part to wrap your brain around, and it's magic to see it come together. Technically, these aren't like an actual pair. They're like sisters, not twins. So one of these socks is toe up and one of these is cuff down, but they match perfectly. They go together super well. They fit exactly the same. And same thing with this pair, and actually with both of these pairs as well, just because I was testing both cuff down and toe up versions. I haven't used these socks. These are more for like demonstration, but I am counting them as finished makes this year because they took a lot of work. Some other baby size socks, we're gonna start here because this is the sock pattern that I had come out in February for Valentine's Day. And these are I'll show the adult socks first. The Romance Reader socks, so cute. They are toe up, heel flap and gusset, which is not super common, but I'm so, so proud of my formula for toe up, heel flap and gusset socks. The bow is embroidered on after the fact. There's charts in the pattern to be able to do that. And then there's this cute ruffle with a contrast color. Adorable. So that is my pair. This is the baby pair that I made just to like test out the pattern and have like a different size. So, so cute and so great for working with scrap yarns. So there are 2 different size bows within the pattern. There's this small bow and this larger bow. So the instructions are included for both. But this is a pretty like vanilla plus type sock pattern. And so it's really easy if you didn't want to do the ruffle or the embroidered bow, you could just purchase this pattern and use it as like a basic sock pattern. for the most part, if you want to toe up heel flap and gusset sock with like some added fun things if you didn't want to just purchase the basic sock pattern that I have in that sock bundle. I also have for my daughter this pair of socks. She wanted rainbow socks, and so I found this cute rainbow yarn. This is a Malabrigo colorway. Do I have it written down? Yes, Malabrigo Ultimate Sock in Gloria. Everything else I used was scrap yarn for all of the socks I've shown thus far. All of these like fun color pops and whatnot, all scrap yarns. I have no idea. For my socks, I do a 64 stitch count sock, and I typically knit with magic loop just because I find it easier to maneuver around a heel flap and gusset, for example. For my daughter, I knit a 48 stitch count sock for a fingering weight sock. These socks are still fitting her, but her foot is growing really fast right now, and so these aren't gonna fit for super long. So I do need to make her some more socks, I feel like. But she really loves the ruffle, and she loves the rainbow yarn. I finished my first garment of the year in January, and this is the Everett pullover. You notice I'm not wearing it. I'm wearing a different sweater I made this year. This was supposed to be my Christmas sweater for 2024, and I just did not quite get it done in time, but that's okay. I was able to wear it Christmas this year. I'm sorry. I'm fighting the lighting, but this is the time I have because newborn. We are making do with even weird lighting issues. I love this cable detail. It just reminds me of like tying up ribbon on presents. I don't know. So that's why I wanted this as a Christmas sweater. I had this yarn, I'd had this pattern for a couple years before I finally casted it on, I think last fall 2024, trying to finish it for Christmas. And I finished it just afterwards, not too much later. And I was able to actually get some family pictures taken in this sweater. So it all worked out great. So pretty. This pattern is by Jessica Thomas. Like I said, the Everett pullover. I use Knit Picks Swish Worsted in the color Garnet Heather, which is stunning. I love this color. I've used it in a couple different projects, and that swish is very drapey, very soft because it's 100% superwash merino. And so it has a really nice drape to it. I will say that I feel like, I don't know if it's the yarn or what, but I feel like it attracts a lot of like hairs and lint and things like that. I don't necessarily notice it like a ton of pilling necessarily, but I feel like it gets dirty all the time with things. And so it just takes a while to kind of get it cleaned up and whatnot. This pattern, last I checked, was not actually available anymore. I know that the designer was working on making it more size inclusive, and I purchased this pattern before I realized it wasn't as size inclusive as I prefer right now. I prefer a bust up to 60 inches. I know that the designer had said she was going to work on resizing the pattern to make it more size inclusive. I don't know if that's why it's not on Ravelry anymore. I don't know. So if you know, let me know. But I did really like this pattern. It was a bottom up, so it was a little bit different for me. It definitely stretched me in the construction a little bit, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. The last item that I made in January is a gnome. If you have not heard, in 2025, Sarah Schira did the Year of Gnomes make-along, where you were supposed to make one of her gnome patterns every single month for the entire year, and I did complete that. That was one of my big goals for the year, and I'm so happy that I was able to follow through on that. My January gnome is Nana's Visit. This was actually the 2024 Advent gnome, and I didn't get around to doing it, but I had the pattern, and so I figured I would start with this. So this is Gnana. She has like this cloak. It separates off of her. I really like that she's got these wire glasses that just like sit really well on her nose. Super cute. I don't have a lot of female gnomes, or definitely female gnomes with like braids or something like that. So this was fun. There's some interesting like embroidery and like color work detail that's just pretty minimal to kind of mimic embroidery, which is really, really cool. So this is Gnana, my first gnome for 2025. Let's talk about my February makes. I only had a couple things, but I had this first test knit. This is the Mount Floral Socks by Jennifer Beaulieu. I've tested quite a few patterns for her, and I use a mini skein set. I use Kimber's Cozy Creations mini skein set in Lilac Bush. Are all these stripes. So pretty. And then the main color is Lavender Lune in Shepherdess that I purchased from Woolen Folk a couple years ago during the dreaded Woolen Folk. When was that? Was that 2023? I just had this vision when I saw this sock pattern of using this yarn and using the mini skeins with it because I thought that they would coordinate well, and I am really happy with how it turned out. It's a very punchy, stunning sock, and I got a lot of compliments on it when I was knitting it at work because it just attracted a lot of visual attention, which was so fun. There's these interesting, maybe like dip stitches. I can't remember exactly what they're called in the pattern. So it's got this really fun texture. It was really intuitive. So even though it had this texture, it was really a quick make. And then I came out with a vlog earlier in 2025 where I read First Lie Wins as it was included in Yarnaceous Fibers book box. And in that box, you got yarn, you got a pattern, you got some other goodies inspired by the book. As you read through the book, you open the packages. Super fun. I've got a lot of these book box vlogs on my channel, but I'll make sure to link the First Lie Wins box down below if you want to see more about it. But the pattern that was included was the Twisted Games hat. Lots of purling, as you can see, but some fun little cables. It worked up pretty quickly. And this yarn is so pretty. You got Surrey and a skein of DK that you held together. Let me see if I wrote down the colorways. Oh, it wasn't Surrey. It was a cashmere blend. So it was, again, Yarnaceous Fibers yarn, Cosmo Cash lace in Just a Ghost. So that was like this like corally pinky color. And then the DK yarn that you held with it was Bronto DK in the color Evie Porter, which has some like light purple and coral pink kind of mixed together. A fun variegated. So that was the Twisted Games hat. You can see more about that in that vlog. I just made it in a size that would fit me. I haven't worn it yet though because it's not been a cold winter yet here in Utah. And then finally my gnome for February, I made a gnome for my daughter. She had been asking. And so this is someone to write gnome about. The mini version, that was a pattern that came out towards the beginning of 2025. I love the little dingly feet. This pattern highlights self-striping yarn. This is a scrap that I had, Desert Vista Dyeworks in the colorway Ashes. Such a beautiful self-striping. I used that yarn for some socks the year before, and so I just had a little bit left over. It was perfect for making this gnome. I kind of want one for myself, just highlighting that self-striping colorway. I really love how I alternated the yarn direction for knitting these little sock feet, and so the colors kind of flip-flop and it just works out perfectly. So cute. The hat keeps coming off, so I had to go tracking down the gnome and the hat separately. But even though I've made gnomes for my daughter, she still steals my gnomes. So maybe I'll just keep making gnomes for myself and letting her play with them because that's what she does anyway, no matter what gnomes I knit her for her own personal use. Probably my biggest finished object of the year was my Astrid blanket. Ta-da! I'll make sure to include some pictures because I can't do it justice here, but this was a book box project, so I included this as a make that I vlogged about. I had 4 different vlogs where I opened the different seasonal book boxes from Woolberry Fiber Co. end of 2023 through 2024. And then at the beginning of 2025, I was able to finish joining the squares together, and so I have a separate vlog about just that finishing process. This has 16 skeins of hand-dyed yarn, plus I think 7 skeins of undyed to do the joining, the border, as well as a couple random fill-in squares to make my blanket in the dimensions I wanted. So let's see how well I can show this. It is very heavy because it is crochet. This is the Astrid blanket by Mallory Krall. And I don't know if you can see, it's gotten some wear. We definitely use it, so some of these ends are coming loose a little bit. I'm gonna rotate over here so that the light's not quite in my eyes. It's getting a lot of use. So what I did was each box had 4 skeins of yarn inspired by the book. So you opened those skeins of yarn as you read the book. I made squares with all 4 colors from that specific box to just keep that color palette together and cohesive. But I alternated which colors were in which order. So these 2 squares are the same color palette, but the colors are not in the same spots. And then I kind of did diagonal placement of the colors. This is so hard to show. So you can see diagonally placed the similar color palette squares on the same like diagonal line. And then anywhere I needed to add some extra squares to make the dimensions I wanted, I added the white squares. Actually, this is undyed yarn. This is Swish DK from Knit Picks as well in their Bear colorway, which I really like because it's just a little bit warmer of a tone than a bright white. And so I do it a lot for holding together with Surrey yarn, for example. I've got a whip right now I'm working on, or having it as a blanket joiner, things like that. So that's kind of my preferred way to save a little bit on projects like this that end up costing a lot because of the hand-dyed yarn. And it's a really special project, but I don't need a special dyed natural color. I can just get a cheap and really cost-effective yarn to like supplement. So that's what I did. It is, like I said, really heavy, really cozy. It is currently on my recliner that I use for breastfeeding. And so nighttime feeds, we get cozy up in this blanket. So it's got a nice weight to it because it is crochet and is thicker. I did hold the yarn double. It's fingering weight yarn. I held it double for the colored squares. And then again, the joining yarn was just DK. I'm really proud of this blanket. This was a really big project. And by the end, I still was so excited about it. And I want to make more blankets. The clouds are coming out and my lighting is changing. So sorry about that. Thank you for being patient as I am making do with what I've got. You can see I got a new microphone. My husband got me some mics for Christmas, which I'm so happy about. But maybe next Christmas I'll get some studio lighting. We shall see. I would love to be able to expand, but I need to grow my channel a little bit first. Another vlog I came out with on my channel, this book box was for A December to Remember. Ooh, that book is by, is it Jenny Bayliss? I'm trying to remember. I'll pop up a picture so you can see. These socks are beautiful. I love this color palette, but this pattern is by Twin Stitches. It was included in the Yarnaceous book box. So cute. Okay, these colors, if I remember correctly, I wrote them down. Rowan Tree Woods is teal. Hidden Houses is the blue. Silver Lockets is the gray. Cussing Crocheters is this hot pink. And then Drinking Christmas is the red. I love this color palette, and this was such a fun pattern to do. Twin Stitches Designs, Julianne, oh, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Laboutiere, I don't know. I am not French, but she does a lot of these like colorwork cuffs and then just stripe on the foot, which is really fun. Super cute. Again, probably one of my favorite color palettes of all the yarns that have come in from Yarnaceous Fibers. I have a lot of her yarns because I really like Maggie's work. My gnome for the month of March was Gnome-Made Gifts, which is an old pattern, an advent from, I don't know, 2023, 2022. I don't know how long I'd had this pattern, but I, again, missed out on creating it during Advent. It fell by the wayside. And so I decided to make it as part of this Year of Gnomes Make-Along to make use of the pattern that I had. I already had yarn set aside for it. Here's my gnome. He's so cute. She's so cute. Are these pigtails? I'm not sure. Pigtails and a beard? I don't really know what's going on, but there are a few different hats, which is so fun. So there's these two hats and then this hat that you can switch out. There's a scarf and a little present stack. And I also had oh, here it is, a little satchel. I did not lose the satchel, thankfully. There's all sorts of these little things and the gnome itself. I really wanted to do the gnome make-along just because, again, I had a lot of patterns. I have a lot of stash yarn, especially scraps, and I thought this was a really good way to use up some scraps. I mean, did I use up any scraps? I don't know, but I was able to use some scraps for those gnomes. Let's talk about April's makes. So I had a test knit. Ooh. This test knit I might have completed in 2024, but I had a long-standing whip of doing the second sock. And so I finally finished the second sock and thus the pair of socks in April of 2025. And these are the Dino Doodle socks. I made them for my daughter. I did toe-up socks. They're a little bit worn. I definitely need to depill them, but also they've got like Play-Doh crusted in them. So it happens when you make socks for a 5-year-old. She picked a couple different colors from my stash, and so I pulled some other scraps that were in the same color family of like greens and blues and purples and pinks. So that's that. Super cute. They already don't fit her. They're already too tight on her. Part of that is the color work, but also part of that is just her foot is just getting way longer all of a sudden. So she has not gotten to wear these a ton now that it is 2026. They are going to be retired soon. I need to clean them up and pack them away for my second child for whenever he is big enough to wear these, if he will want to wear them. But they are too small for my daughter now because kids grow just too dang fast. So that's another reason why I wanted to finish this whip towards the beginning of the year. We'll talk about my gnome next. Sorry, this light is again like right in the middle. Should I turn so I'm still in the middle? My room is a little bit messy right now, but this needs some TLC too. This is Professor Fungi. This was a mystery knit along that Schira hosted in the spring, and so I participated in it. Super, super cute. I love his little corkscrew beard. So cute. You can see I tied this hand to the body so that he wouldn't drop his little like basket, but something weird happened. And so now it's not only loose, but there's like a knot I can see here. I need to like undo this and then reattach it. I had started messing with it when I was setting up and then I just gave up. So I'm going to set him aside so I can fix him because that is, I don't know what's going on with that. Super cute as far as gnomes go. And this is my one finished object that's not knitting or crochet that was felted, but this is my Woolen Watercolors like painted wool piece that I made. I did a workshop at the Great Basin Fiber Arts Fair. The workshop was hosted by Tammy of Goldie Knots, Montana. And I had so much fun making this mountain scene with some wildflowers in the valley. So, so pretty. I have wanted to do more. I just haven't made the time to do it, but I'm really proud of how this one turned out. So I showed it on my podcast. I'm showing it here, even though it's not knit or crochet. All right, in May, I was pregnant at this time and I was starting to lose my mojo. So you'll notice for the next couple months, I don't have as many makes, but I did have these cute, cute socks. This is the Comfort Core sock pattern by Summer Lee. I used a Valentine's Day sock set from Dyeworks Yarn Co. The main color is called Kiss Me. The minis are called Red Hot and Electric Love. I just love the athletic look of this pattern, and I really wanted to try the different textures that Summer Lee includes in the pattern, and so I gave it a try. Super cute. You can see like this texture right here. There's a texture on the arch of the foot. Super cute. And again, I love the athletic stripes, and this yarn is really, really cute with the speckles. It just works perfectly. A great sock set. Another pair of socks I made in May. This is for a video, and these are the Book Fairy socks by Sock Witchery. Lindsay, I don't know her last name, but these were included in a book box by Yarnaceous Fibers again, where I read Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I'd already read it, but I had been meaning to read the second and third books in the series and hadn't gotten around to it. So for this box, I reread the first book and opened the package. And then I read the second and third books as well while I was working on these socks. So this is that sock pattern. It's only on one side of the sock. Such a cute lace design and a really pretty sock set combo. The main color is called My Dear Emily with salted plums, this purple, and golden feathers. So again, that box was inspired by the first book in the Emily Wild series, and I was able to complete the whole series as I was working on this project, which was very satisfying. And again, all my vlogs that I mention here are going to be linked in the description box, if not linked up above. I only have room for a few cards, so I'll pick my favorites to link up above to send you to. And then my gnome for May was Noodles. A really cute little gnome that is included in Schira's Gnomes of Grimblewood book that she came out with not too long ago, maybe in 2024. But I have the book and I hadn't made anything from it yet, so I wanted to. And these two colors are both mini skeins from Lovejoy Fibers, and I got them from the Great Basin Fiber Arts Fair. I do have a vlog of me going through it last year in 2025, but just a cute little gnome. I wanted something quick to make, just cute, but not the smallest gnome I made this year. June and July, I ended up missing a podcast because I was just not feeling good. First trimester hit me real hard, and so this is my June and July makes category because I don't remember what was June and what was July except for my gnomes. So I guess I will start with the gnomes. I've been ending with the gnomes for each month, but my daughter also wanted a Noodles. She wanted one just like it, but she didn't want the beard. So I made her a Noodles. So they look really similar. I used the same colors. It looks like I had a looser gauge on this one. Wow. Oh my gosh. Definitely a slightly looser gauge on the one from my daughter. You can definitely see it in the hat. But even in the body too, it's just like slightly bigger. That's for my daughter. because she really wanted a noodles. Again, she doesn't play with it as much as she plays with my gnomes. And then for July, I made, this is Nicole, and I had an idea to make a Santa themed gnome. And so I grabbed a bunch of reds from my stash, and I was like, oh, this is plenty of yarn. This is gonna be great. You can see that I have some striping in the hat because I kept running out of red yarn. And even though all the reds look really similar, you can definitely tell they're distinct in the hat. So I did some fading between the colors to make it less stark, but still definitely some striping there, unfortunately. But yeah, the hat took like all 3 of my balls of red scrap yarn that I had. So I didn't have any more for finishing a Santa gnome. And so I grabbed some Christmas yarn that has more green tones in it, and I did the body in that. Still a Christmas in July style gnome, but not the Santa gnome I was aiming for. And this pattern, Nicole, is from the Gnomes of Grimblewood book as well. During June or July, I also finished this book sleeve that I wanted to make. I love this yarn. It is so pretty. This is, sorry, it's a little bit wrinkly from being in my work bag, but this is Bibliophile is the name of the colorway by Dragon Horde Yarns. And I had purchased this at a local yarn store, I think Wasatch and Wool up in Park City. But I have a couple different buttons all down here. I wanted to make this kind of a universal book sleeve so that as I take books to work, to read for like night shifts, because I work at the hospital, that I could have them covered and a little bit safer in my book bag, because I had just like all sorts of stuff in my book bag. Wanted to protect my books a little bit better for the books I actually bring. And this actually coordinates with my e-reader case that I used to have. And so it was just like a cute little set kind of thing. As I've used it, I've realized that because it's stockinette, it stretches a lot more than I'm used to. And so I could definitely make this smaller to make it a little bit more usable, but it still is definitely useful. I've used it a few times. I don't read physical books often at work, but when I do, this comes in really handy. So that is my own design. I haven't written up the pattern yet. I have some notes written down, but I'll definitely want to make 1 or 2 more versions to kind of get the sizing where I want it to be before I would release such a pattern. And then I have a couple pairs of socks I made in this time period. These are the Flirt and Flounce socks by Megan Gonzalez. I love testing for her. Nurtured Knitwear. She is really a prolific maker, and she has some really good pattern designs, and she's really good to test for. She's very responsive and has well tech edited patterns before they come to the testers as well. So I definitely recommend testing for her if you get a chance. These were inspired by Wicked. I think I finished the first sock earlier on, and I knit the second sock and finished it in the spring. Let me see if I can show this really pretty texture. So pretty. This colorway is by Sorella Yarn in the Main Street colorway, and it was the most Glinda yarn that I had in my stash, and so I thought that it would be perfect for Wicked socks. It has some really cool like micro striping going on. And then for sock week, so this was in July, I knit the Season Socks by Summer Lee. This was again a pattern I had in my stash that I had wanted to work on for a while, and I finally got around to it. So I have a vlog where I knit these socks in a week for sock week. This is the pair. The yarn is called Waffle Cone by Lovejoy Fibers. I got it at a local yarn store to me at Harmony in Provo. And then, ooh, the minis. Can I remember which one is which? I think Bunny is the pink one, and Poppy is the yellow one. I don't know if that sounds right or not, but that's my guess. But I wanted to alternate which contrast went where, and so that's what I did. Super cute. This was a fun texture. It did feel like it took a little longer because the way that this texture is kind of squinches the sock and makes it shorter, and so it took more rounds to get to the length that I like and the way it fit. You can see kind of it bends out because the stockinette takes up more space than this scrunched up waffle texture. So it kind of turns a little bit. Super, super cute. I love this combo. I handpicked the main skein and the minis to go together in like a self-assembled sock set. And so I'm really happy with how they turned out. For the month of August, I was feeling better. So I have a lot of makes to talk about. Where to start? I made some World's Simplest Mittens by Tin Can Knits for my daughter. I did mess them up. I knew which size I was supposed to be working on, but for some reason I got distracted and ended up knitting a slightly bigger size for this portion of the mitts until I realized why my numbers were not working. And then I realized that I had casted on the wrong number of stitches, that I had done the wrong number of increases, yada, yada, yada. Not a huge deal. So they're just a little bit big on my daughter. So she hasn't worn them a ton. They're a little bit wet. I did just wash them because they were very dirty from the last time she wore them at daycare. They're just in like a superwash merino wool, like a Cascade 220 superwash yarn, I think. I can't quite remember. I just have this light pink color that my daughter picked out when we went to a yarn store together, and I told her I'd make mittens, and I finally got around to them in the summertime. So she's been able to wear them a little bit. She'll definitely grow into them because they are a little big on her. I also made this random hat. This is a crochet pattern. I had a project I had been meaning to frog for a while, so I finally frogged it, and I had all this yarn, all these random balls left over, so I decided to just make something. Just because. And this hat's a little small on me, so I'll have to give it to somebody else. But this is the Snowy Wheat Puff Crochet Hat by Brianna K Designs, and you can find this pattern for free on her website. And I made it in my size. You crochet it in rows like this and then cinch up the top. This part, the top part, is plenty stretchy with the wheat puff stitches, but the brim is just like a little too tight for my comfort on my head and not like my ideal fit of a hat. So hence why it's probably going to go to somebody else. It is non-superwash wool, so I don't really want to donate it because it would require a little bit more care to take care of this yarn than I think is fair to like give to somebody who like is in need of a donated hat. I don't remember what the yarn was. It might be like a fisherman's wool, something like that. Something I bought from Michael's or Joann's years ago. I made a couple things for my baby boy to kind of announce that I was having a boy. When I had my 20-week ultrasound, I bought some blue yarn from Sorella, their home collection. I bought the color Gingham, and I also bought a pink in the color, I think, Saturday. So I had a blue skein and a pink skein, and I was gonna, when I found out the gender, make some things in the corresponding color to announce if it was a boy or a girl. Not that colors aren't gendered, but just to make it, easy visually to like make something for my future baby. So it was a boy. He is a boy. I made some things out of gingham. So I have a couple things in August that I made, but I also finished something in September. I made a couple DK ribbed tube socks for him, just for the cozy factor, because being born in December means that it's very cold outside. I mean, it hasn't been as cold here in Utah as it usually is, but I was anticipating an actual winter when I was making these, and that was my own pattern. I have not written up the DK basic sock bundle yet, but I should work on that this year. That would be a good goal of mine. And then I made the teeny tiny knit mitts by We Knit Together, and these are intended for newborns. So you see, they don't have thumbs. It's just to cover the hands and keep them cozy warm outside. I don't like to use mitts or to cover my baby's hands just because they're using their hands to explore the world and learning sensory wise, but sometimes they need something for their hands to keep cozy. So I made these. These were a really quick make. I have a few pairs of socks to share with you from August. First is this test. These are the Flawless Flower Bed socks by, again, Jennifer Beaulieu. I've tested a few of her patterns, and I was just enjoying pulling some things from my stash. This sparkly, colorful set is a mini skein set from Candy Shop Yarns. This is the Blushing Lilacs Fade set in the color Gilded Petals, Rosy Dawn, Orchid Glow, Lilac Haze, and Velvet Plum. And yeah, I don't know how well you can tell, but it's got sparkle in all those mini skeins. So cute. And then I just used a bare yarn or like an undyed yarn, like a cream colored Cascade Heritage maybe. I can't quite remember what I did to kind of make that contrast. Such a fun color work pattern. And I did mess up on this stripe of the second sock, but it was too late. I'm just gonna leave it be. They're made by a human. It is now a feature of the socks. I also had a vlog come out where I knit the MCAL socks for Stephen West, and this year they were called Delectable Collectible, and I really love this pattern. This was so fun to make, and the color palette that I had just made me so happy, and so these socks bring me a lot of joy. So this is my version of Delectable Collectible. Again, I did a vlog about this. You can see I ran out of this peach. This was the same peach that I used for the 2 noodles gnomes that I made. I ran out halfway through, unfortunately, so I didn't have it on the foot, but I still like the color palette in general, both with the peach and without the peach. Some really fun textures. This was a lot of fun to do, and I was able to finish this pair pretty quickly, like within that MCal time frame. So I'm really proud of myself for doing that, because that definitely took some work to do. And then this pair of socks I also included in a vlog, though they're just vanilla shorty socks. These I'm calling my Pride and Prejudice socks. This yarn is by Nomadic Yarns in the colorway Bennett Sisters, and I have a Time mini that went with it. Well, that I chose to purchase with it. So fun. I tried to guess within that Pride and Prejudice vlog which color represented which sister, which is kind of a fun exercise to think about. But in my Pride and Prejudice vlog, I reread Pride and Prejudice, and I read a bunch of books inspired by Pride and Prejudice, like retellings of Pride and Prejudice. I had like a Regency dress that I wore for part of it. I did a Jane Austen inspired puzzle. I got to watch the 2005 adaptation again. So I did all sorts of like Pride and Prejudice themed things. And then I realized I had this yarn in my stash, and I thought it would be so fun to just knit this pair of shorties that I had been meaning to cast on as part of the vlog. So I did. I mentioned earlier that I made 1 snake this year. If you did not know what that meant, it means I have this massive, massive project that I severely underestimated how long it would be. I wanted to do like a reading tracker type of project, and I had a couple ideas, maybe do like bookmarks or something, keychains, I don't know, and I just was not getting the result I wanted. And so I decided to just stop with all the other plans, and I was like, I'm just gonna make a reading snake for 2024 where each color represents a different genre and each stripe on the snake represents a different book that I read throughout the year. And then white is kind of like the placeholder in between each month. And so this snake represents all the books, all 200 books that I read in 2024, which is wild. My daughter really loves it, so a couple of the tails are poking out because it's gotten well loved, but at least it's gotten well loved by my daughter. I really like the color palette. I chose some Rickarumi DK yarn from my local yarn store, and it was good to like finally finish this. So I tried to power through and finally finish in August, and it just got so annoying because it's such a small circumference of going round and around. It just got kind of tedious. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this project because of the tedium of it, but I also feel like this pattern was well written, and so I would recommend the pattern like in that sense. This pattern is a Rainbow Snake by Rhonda Mole, and you can get the pattern for free on her blog. So yeah, again, this is my snake, my rainbow snake that my daughter has played with. She sleeps with it quite often, and she wants me to use some of my leftover yarns to make more snakes. I may or may not do that. I'm not quite sure. Jury is still out. My gnome for August. This is my littlest gnome of the year. I got my Santa gnome. So I used the teeny wee tiny bits of scraps I had left, and I made this little guy. He's so tiny. It's crazy. His name is Niblet, and he's in the No Fun Like Gnome Fun pattern. There's like a couple different small gnomes within that pattern. And yeah, this is Niblet. He is Santa themed. So he's got like a little black belt on, and he's got like a white beard, and he's dressed in red. Definitely small and fiddly, but it was fun to be able to do this. I've seen other people make little gnomes like this and make them into earrings, which I think is such a fun idea. But yeah, he's just my littlest gnome, and he's finally Santa themed, which was what I was hoping for, to have a Santa themed gnome. August was a big month, but let's talk about September's makes. I had a couple really, really big finished objects in the month of September, but we'll talk about the couple small things first. So I mentioned this already, but I used more of that Gingham yarn by Sorella Yarn to make a muscle burra. So I wanted to use up that whole skein. I did not need this white stripe. This is how he wears it right now. It is very long on him. His head is like 98th, 99th percentile. He has a big head. He's a large baby. He was almost 10 pounds. And so even though this is the baby size muscle burra, it's definitely on the bigger side, so he'll be able to wear it for a while. I just found that I ran out of the blue yarn, and I was able to finish off the hat with like just barely any, like a little nub of yarn left. Perfect yarn chicken. But then I was looking at it and I was like, man, it just is not quite long enough for what the pattern is written for. So I did some surgery on it, and I added this scrap of DK weight bear yarn to kind of supplement that length. And so I added another like 2 inches to it maybe. But like I said, my son does not need that extra 2 inches because he currently wears it like this, which looks kind of like a watchman cap, but this covers his ears. So he will get a chance to wear this hat for a long, long time, which is nice. And then my gnome, before we talk about my big FOs for that month, is this cutie. Look at his cute scrunchy hat. This is Gnome Pun Intended by Schira. So cute. Pretty simple as far as gnomes go. He's got this fun loopy beard, but the hat is definitely a showstopper. There's some like dipping down to rows below to like pick up stitches kind of thing and like knit them together. There's some kind of scrunching that we did as well as some shaping to kind of get this curve. So it was a fun experience to work on this hat. Cute little slouchy thing. And then my big finished objects. This is an Advent project that took me a year and a half to do, over a year and a half. So I think this was from the 2023 Advent colorways from Through the Wardrobe Yarn Co. And it was bookish inspired. And this is my Grove Shawl Light. It is nice and big. These colors, I'll show half because it's a little easier to see. I have a hard time remembering these colors because this project was on the needles for so long. I think it's Fireside, my favorite color of the bunch because it's like a yellow and mauve type of variegated. And then this mauve is called Spice Chai. This green with some mauve speckled in there is called Christmas Tree Farm. And then this green is called Comfort Read. So again, it was like holiday bookish themed yarn. So nice and cozy vibes. It was a weekly countdown. And so you got 4 different skeins throughout the month of December. And this is a long-term project. But I'd been trying to work on some long-standing whips throughout this year. At least in the middle of this year, I was much better at that. And so I was really trying to hammer this one out. It's mostly garter stitch. It's got I-cord edging. And it's nothing crazy. Like, it's a pretty simple pattern. The designer, Sarah Opie, has instructions for the fading, so you don't even have to think about it. You can just follow along in the pattern to fade your colors together. And I think that these 4 colors work really well together in a shawl. I love every single one of these colors, and so I was happy to have some leftovers after I finished. But again, it's not been too cold, so I haven't worn this since I finished it, unfortunately. And then I have a vlog where I completed a summer countdown calendar that was 31 days long, and I decided to make an anthology throw, but this was inspired by Onyx Storm. I thought it would just be something fun. Not my favorite color palette, but also not my favorite book, so that's okay. It was just a fun experience, something I'd wanted to try, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to try it. This is my anthology throw. It's really hard to show. My daughter's been using this as like, she'll tie it around her waist and it's like a train, like a wedding dress. She tied it around her cheetah stuffy the other day and said that her cheetah is gonna get married today. So she wants me to finish this video so I can hand this off to her for her cheetah's wedding dress. But these are the 31 colors, all inspired by Onyx Storm. This is from Dragon Horde Yarns. This was a fun pattern to do. I think that I would enjoy this more if it was in different colors. I also tried really hard to pound through this and get it done, and I just got a little burnt out on it, so I had to kind of take a break and set it aside and then come back to it. But honestly, 3 months for an Advent project with 31 colors is not bad. I really like the size of this. I like the drape of it. I like, because it's a fingering weight knit blanket, that it's really thin, but it's just really good for like a throw, honestly. Like, I'm really happy with it. So I would definitely make this again with a different color palette, or maybe doing something different with playing with the colors. I'm not quite sure. And that pattern, the anthology throw, is by Helen Stewart. We're moving into the last quarter of the year for our October makes. First and foremost is my Mom's Hug sweater by Anne-Catherine Stoll. And this sweater, let me show it a little bit better. Oh, ow. Oh my gosh. I sat on the floor for too long. I can scooch over here a little bit more now that the sun's moving. But you'll see that it's got this front panel and a back panel. And so this gave a lot of space for my pregnant belly. So it was really good as a maternity top. And it also is really nice for breastfeeding and being able to uncover. It also is nice for just if your body's changing shape. It's a flattering fit even if you're not breastfeeding or have a pregnant body. And this construction was interesting. It was very much a trust the process kind of thing where, you know, you cast on in one spot and you knit for like 4 inches and then you cut your yarn and go somewhere else. Very much like pieced together modular to make this yoke, but it was a very interesting construction and it wasn't hard. It was well written. The pattern was very well written. Definitely recommend. And then once you were all joined together, like your front and back under the arms, then it was really easy to just go back and forth in panels. And so it really was not a hard make to do. It was just like a little bit interesting construction wise. And so had to pay attention for like the beginning and do like 1 or 2 sections at a time. Make sure I finished that section before I put down my sweater so that I knew where I was leaving off kind of thing. I used Cascade 220 in the color Faded Denim, which is a non-superwash yarn, and I just wanted something to be a little bit inexpensive because I assumed that this would get messy with especially breastfeeding. Things get messy, you get spit up on you, milk, etc., etc. So I wanted something that was inexpensive, that was a little bit more hard wearing, that I could clean pretty easily and could like withstand multiple cleanings type of thing. And I really liked this sweater when I was pregnant, and I've worn it once or twice now with my baby, and I'm still enjoying it. So we'll let you know how I feel as far as like the long lasting wear of this, but definitely recommend this pattern, and I've really enjoyed this yarn. And so for right now, I would recommend the yarn, but I definitely plan on using Cascade 220 for other projects in the future. And this is probably one of my favorite makes of the year because it was just a big accomplishment to like hunker down, get this sweater done, to make something for myself for my pregnant body as things were changing, and it was hard to find clothes that fit me. None of my pregnancy clothes from my first pregnancy fit me. So it was just like kind of a hard season to find clothes that I liked and that made me feel good and that fit well. And so being able to make something in a pretty short timeline to accomplish that need is just something I'm really proud of, and that this is something that I can enjoy and wear beyond being pregnant too. So yeah, one of my favorite makes of the year for sure.
This would be a good point to jump in and talk about my deadwood socks that I had forgotten about when I made this video. There are reasons, we talked about them earlier, but I still don't have them in my possession. Maggie's sending them to me as we speak, but I will make sure to include a picture for you so you can see those if you have not seen that pattern release. But I released this pattern in October. I designed it in conjunction with Maggie of Yarnaceous Fibers as well as Emily of Fangirl Fibers. They were doing a collaboration yarn dyeing thing, and so I made this pair of socks for that. So Maggie took the socks to, I don't know which festival she vended at, but for Rhinebeck weekend she went out to New York. Emily took them to some event in Texas, I think. So these socks are texture based. I really wanted to lean into a spookier motif of a dead tree just for spooky vibes, but I wanted it to be a little bit more subtle. We don't really see pearl and knit texture pictograms, I don't know if that's the right word, on a lot of knit pieces, so I wanted to play around with that. These are toe up, heel flap and gusset socks, and they are sized in adult sizes. There's a chart, there's also written instructions for it. I'm happy with how these turned out. They were a huge labor of love. I had a vision in mind, and it was really hard to make that happen. So I'm really happy that I was able to successfully design these, and I'm really grateful that Maggie and Emily wanted to collaborate with me. A little embarrassing that I forgot to talk about this pair of socks in my roundup for the year, but we're including it now so you can still hear about it. I'll make sure to have the pattern pages for Etsy and Ravelry linked down below. Sorry, I am baby wearing, trying to keep him happy. That's why I'm rocking right now. We're making do in this postpartum period.
The next thing I want to talk about is a Wonderland hat that I made. This is a pattern by me, and I bought this yarn from Sorella Yarn. Oh, that's the seam. Let's show the other side so it looks a little nicer. So this is Sorella Yarn in the color Snowdrift. It was a variegated that coordinated with their winter tonals last winter, like in 2024, beginning of 2025, end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And I loved it. And so I purchased this skein in the worsted base to make a Wonderland hat because this is a pattern of mine, and it's always fun to revisit patterns I've designed. And the reason that I actually finally cast this on was because I was teaching some friends at a crafting retreat how to crochet, and I picked this pattern as the one I would use to teach because a couple of the girls already had exposure to crochet, so I didn't want to make something like a dishcloth. But it's honestly a pretty simple pattern because you're just working half double crochets and increasing until you get to the right size, and then you're just going around and around and around. And then by then you're kind of used to crocheting, and so then you can tackle something a little bit more tricky with the texture here, which I think is such a fun detail. Or you can just bail and have a simple half double crochet hat if you don't want to do the texture. But I'm really happy with this pattern. It is sized from baby all the way through adult large, I think, if I remember correctly. But anyway, I was teaching this pattern to my friends for this crafting retreat, so I wanted to practice making the pattern because it had been over a year since I'd made it last. So I wanted to just refamiliarize myself with this pattern that I crocheted and make sure I knew what might be some sticking points to teach on for this little workshop. So that's why I finally made this hat that had been in my queue for a little bit. I also had a couple October-y makes, like Halloween type makes. So these are some Halloween socks. This color is called Vintage Halloween and it is by Northwoods Fibers in their DK tweed base. They don't dye colors like this anymore. This is an old colorway that I purchased probably 3 or 4 years ago. I have the vintage Thanksgiving colorway already set aside that I've made into a pair of socks, and so I wanted to use up the vintage Halloween colorway to kind of coordinate with that. I really love these colors. I have issues with tweed, texture wise. I just want to pick off all the tweedy bits that are falling off of my yarn, but I think the look is really nice, and these are really cozy for as the weather's cooling down. These were just an easy vanilla sock, my own personal recipe for DK socks. So for me, I'm a 64 stitch count sock for fingering weight. I'm a 48 stitch count sock for DK. Hopefully my microphone is helping so you can't hear my family. My gnome for the month of October was another mystery knit along, and this one is Nettle. It's a combo pattern, so there's 2 gnomes. There's Nettle and Numpkin. Numpkin is more pumpkin themed and Nettle is more witchy themed. Of course, she's still a pumpkin, but super, super cute. Really fun making this curly hair and the little stripy stockings. I like the dangling feet. I think that's such a fun little thing so you can sit her on the edge. My daughter really likes this one, so I think that I need to make her a witchy gnome next. Super, super cute. And then I've got a couple makes that I don't have with me actually, that I made for my friend who is expecting her first baby. I made a pair of socks and I made a cardigan for her, and I'm so proud of how they turned out. So I'll make sure to pop up a picture so you can see. First, I'll talk about the socks. I just did baby size DK tube socks, so similar to the socks I made for my son, but I made them toe up, and then I did a ruffle on the edge to make them a little bit more feminine and cutesy. And I used the ruffle from my Romance Reader socks pattern for that, just modified for a baby DK sock. And then I also made this cardigan. This is the Oh Baby Cardi by Roberta Rich. It is a free pattern, but I really wanted to use a little bit of a lace pointelle detail to just make it a little bit more feminine. I just saw the inspiration for this lace style pattern in some of the things she put on her registry, and so I wanted to include it in the knits I made for her daughter. And so I substituted the lace pattern from the Ingrid cardigan by Rillerunt, and I superimposed the pattern into the Oh Baby cardigan. It took some math, it took some figuring out, but it honestly worked out really, really well with the stitch counts I had. It honestly worked out better than I could have planned myself. So I'm really proud of this. I tried to take really good notes, and so they're in my project page on Ravelry about this pattern. I definitely want to make this again to just double check my notes, but I was really, really pleased with how this turned out. And for the yarn for both of these, I used that Sorella yarn home line in the color Saturday, which was the pink color in case I had a girl. And because I didn't, I had this random skein, decided to use it for my friend. And again, it was a perfect fit to make the cardigan and then this pair of DK baby socks. I had barely any yarn left over, so it was perfect stash buster. And that Oh Baby cardigan, really well written. I definitely recommend that pattern. Again, it is free, which is nice. And I know that there's a kids version that you can pay for larger sizes too. But this was a really good baby project to work on. We are almost done talking about November now. I had a couple test knits. This one is the reverse Flegel heel. And this is by Abby of What I Knit. She's here on YouTube. And this yarn, I'd been wanting to cast this on. This is the Sleepy Hollow sock set by Kimber's Cozy Creations. It came with this orange and this magenta mini. Such a beautiful variegated, very fall colored. It just makes me so happy. So I tested this pattern for Abby. Almost all Fleegle Heel patterns are toe up, and she wanted to swap it and make it a cuff down pattern. And so just took a little bit of work math-wise for her to do that. So I volunteered to test the pattern for her. You can see this Fleegle heel. It's kind of like a triangular heel flap, and you don't have to pick up stitches, but you then have like a gusset that you are decreasing. So different construction from a typical heel flap and gusset construction. I am really comfortable with the heel flap and gusset, so this wasn't my preferred heel because I wasn't as comfortable with like the math. A little biased on that. I also think that sizing wise, it's a little bit loose on the back of the heel for me, and so I think I would maybe want to do fewer stitches, like to not do quite as long of a heel flap, so I have fewer stitches. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to play around with it to get like my perfect fit, but I didn't mind this heel. It just wasn't my favorite because I'm not as used to it. For the cuff, I decided to do one of the cuff clubs from Summer Lee's Cuff Club Volume 2. I think this is the August pattern, is this like little itty bitty cable, just to add a little bit more interest to it too. But otherwise it's a vanilla sock with that reverse Fleegle heel done on it. I have this sock pattern as well that I totally didn't mention in my podcast. I realized I had these socks and I didn't have them in my notes. I don't know how they got missed, but these are the Light as a Feather socks by Katie Herod. And this yarn is beautiful. This is all by Treehouse Knits, and the main color is Moana. This orange is called Wayfinder, and this periwinkle is called Together Still, just a little different. My daughter loves Moana, and so I wanted to buy some Moana yarn for her. So I bought the main skein, a couple minis to go with it, so that she could decide how she wanted a pair of socks for her in Moana yarn. And this was the configuration that she chose. Was to have the periwinkle for the toe, the orange for the heel, and the rest of the sock was all the main color. This texture, so addictive. It was so fun to make. Unlike other waffle type stitch patterns, this one didn't like scrunch the knitting too much, and so it worked up really, really quickly. So I definitely see myself making more in this texture. And this yarn is just so beautiful. So I tested this pattern. There's a couple different versions. I think there was like cuff down and toe up. There's a couple heels. There's fingering and DK. The designer did a lot of like options. So I did my favorite, cuff down, heel flap and gusset, and I did it in my daughter's size, the 48 stitch count size, which I think is the extra small adult size. And then my last test knit I want to talk about is the cyclamen cowl. How do I want to hold this? This is by Ksenia Nedon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I just loved these flower textures and I really wanted to test this piece for her. I'm really grateful that I was chosen to test this. I used a mini skein set. This is the So Happy Jane Tiny Popper mini skein set, so very springtime colored, and I followed a similar color pattern that the designer did, where she did color like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I did that, though I had 6 colors total. This flower was a little bit finicky to do. I definitely got used to it. The first couple times I was doing this flower texture, I was not having fun. So it definitely stretched me a little bit, but this is a perfect springy, flowery cowl that I made. The one that the designer made was in Christmassy colors because the cyclamen flower is like a Christmassy flower, I guess. Holiday flower. I don't really know. I'm really excited to wear this in the springtime because I just feel like these colors are just so happy. A couple other accessories, though these were included in a vlog. This was the book box vlog by Yarnaceous Fibers that most recently came out on my channel. That was for the Blackout Book Club box. And that book is by Amy Lynn Green, if I remember that correctly. But with just one skein of DK weight yarn from Yarnaceous, you could make mitts and a bandana. And so that's what I did. And it was like the perfect amount of yarn. If you wanted to make large mittens, you probably would run out of yarn, but I made the medium. I'll show you the bandana first though. Ta-da! Really easy stockinette with some fun baubles. So it was a really nice, quick project. I'm not a bandana person. I need to find a good home for this, I think. And then the matching mitts. Again, stockinette for the most part with these fun baubles down the side. I had a hard time getting my mittens to be exactly the same size. So after frogging twice, so starting a third time on my second mitt, I said it was good enough. We'll see. I think my brother may like this color palette. I really like these colors. It kind of reminds me of like River Rocks maybe. The color is called Back to the Library. This is in Yarnaceous Fibers Bronto DK base. So I'm really happy with how these turned out. And they were a nice little palette cleanser to work on these. Final project for November I want to talk about is my gnome. This is Noelle, and this was a new pattern that Sarah Schira just came out with this past fall. I think they came out with it early November or like in October maybe. And there's just some really fun color work, very festive holiday. I love these little mitts. They're little mittens, so cute. Again, a great way to make like a holiday themed gnome and to kind of stretch myself because I had done a few easy gnomes because I just didn't make the time for it. But I really love this design, so I made the time to make this even though it was a little bit bigger, had the color work that took longer, but I worked hard and got it done in time. So, so cute. I love it. I have quite the collection of holiday, like Christmassy themed gnomes now. December, our last month. Let's talk about it. You will have probably seen my December Makes podcast that just recently came up on my channel. And so I will not go into great detail about these, but let's start off with my family Christmas socks. Christmas Eve socks, I should say. I've had this tradition. I've done it most years, the past 4 years. I think 3 out of the 4 years, maybe this is 4 out of the past 5 years, I have made Christmas Eve socks for my family. The yarn that I chose this year, and I just made vanilla socks. I've done patterns in the past. I wanted something simple this Christmas season. So this is Yarnaceous Fibers. She is a local to me dyer, so that's part of the reason why I have a lot of yarns from her. But this is called Country Christmas, this main color. And then this contrast color I chose is called Lorien Leaves. And like I said, I made Christmas Eve socks for my whole family. So this is my husband's pair. He likes ankle socks. My pair was DK, so I held the fingering weight double. I played with some marling just because I've been in the mood to marl recently. And I just wanted really cozy socks. Those are mine. My daughter requested knee-high socks like a week before Christmas. So then I had to accommodate, but I finished them just barely in time. So these are the knee-high socks. I made them ribbed so they kind of cinch in to her foot and leg a little bit better with like the changing shape and stuff. And then right around here, I started adding stitches to accommodate going around her calf. So I increased and then I started decreasing again for the cuff to kind of, again, cinch in a little bit more to keep them from sliding down. They fit her really well. So I'm really happy with how they turned out, but it used a lot more yarn and took a lot more time than I had budgeted for. So it was a little bit stressful trying to finish these, especially with the impending birth of my newborn, but it all worked out. Speaking of my newborn, here are his cute little DK ribbed socks that I knit him. I definitely have some leftover yarn. I don't know how much, but I have enough that I can probably use them for like a gnome or like a really small scrappy type of project. I'm not quite sure. Probably I'd guess like 30 to 40 grams of both the contrast and the main color. I had 2 full skeins of the main color to begin with, just from my previous experience knitting socks for my whole family. I definitely am happy with the amount of yarn I purchased and the amount of yarn that I was able to use up for this pile of family Christmas Eve socks. Maybe next year I'll do some fun color work or something, but I just knew that this Christmas season was too busy for me to want to use any brain power. So that's why I just did vanilla this year. Let's talk about a couple gifts that I made in December. I made the Flora doily by Karine Ashamar. And this is a free pattern. I'll make sure to link it in my description box. Again, I have all the links that I can fit with the characters allotted to me down below. And I used Cascade Yarns Anchor Bay in the color Sage. I made this for my sister-in-law's wedding as like a cute table decoration to have near their sign-in book for their wedding. And my goals were to have a round doily that had some classic shaping and designs in it. I didn't want something like too modern or like picture-y, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. I sized up and used a DK yarn, and so I used a bigger crochet hook to crochet this, and so I made it a little bit bigger than the final dimensions just because of the sizing up of the yarn and hook. I did the bigger version, so I used all 25 rounds included in the pattern. I don't know what she's going to use this for now, but I was happy to make her something that she could use for a wedding decoration, and we'll see, I guess, like if this is the kind of thing that she would want to have as like decor in her house or not. I don't know, we'll see. And then the other gift that I made was just an improvised little basket. I have a picture, I'll pop it up here, but I used Bernat Homemaker deck in, I think, the aqua colorway. I have like a little hoard in my stash that I have not used up yet, and because this yarn has been discontinued and it was so good, I just am very slowly using this in my stash. I'm just saving it for some special projects. So I made this little basket for my friend. I wanted to make her like a little goodie basket of some homemade like bath and body type products, and I thought that she would really appreciate me hand making a basket for her that she could then use around her house somewhere. And so I decided to make her a little basket as a little Christmas gift. She was my doula for my birth, and so I wanted, again, to just make sure I gave her a gift to show her my appreciation for her. Our final finished object for the year 2025. My gnome. I finished this at like 11 p.m. on December 31st, in the 11th hour, literally. This is Nandad's Grand Adventure, and this was the Advent gnome for December this year. I, again, was too busy, did not get a chance to participate in the Advent in real time, but after Christmas, after we were settled and home with our new baby, I cast this on because I really wanted to complete this gnome, and I really wanted to complete the Year of Gnomes knit along. So this is Nandad. I love his mustache. It's so fun. And he's got these cute little suspenders going on too. His arms are a little bit wonky, but wonkiness is gnominess, right? So he actually is made to go with Gnana. If I can find her in this like pile of stuff. Where's Gnana? Here's Gnana. So I tried to pick my colors accordingly so that they could go together as a couple, and I am very pleasantly surprised with just how much they coordinate, like better than I anticipated. So I'm really happy with this little pair of gnomes that I made this year. And there you have it, the 57 or 58 finished objects that I made in the year 2025. Lots of smaller items, but also a few bigger things that I'm really proud of. I'm especially proud of the patterns that I came out with this year. I'm so proud of myself for completing the Year of Gnomes knit along with Sarah Schira, and so making 12 gnomes throughout the year. I am really proud of how I adapted that baby cardigan for my friend, and I would love to make another one, so I need to find someone with a baby girl that I can make it for. I'm really proud of this sweater that I made that is going to suit various seasons of my life. And I just am so grateful to have knitting and crochet in my life, that I can invest myself in being creative, in being productive, in making things for myself, as well as making things for other people that just I can imbue my love into them too as a gift. And I'm so happy to share all of those things with you. So if you want to stick around and see the things that I work on in this new year in 2026, definitely make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification down below to be notified every time I post a new video. I have no idea what my posting schedule will look like as we are adjusting to a newborn. I don't know if you heard, he was crying, so it's probably about time to feed him. But I definitely am committed to still posting videos and sharing the things that I'm working on, the things that I'm reading, and just other cozy vlog type content. I do have a big goal for 2026 that I will talk about in another video, but it is attack my stash. This is a goal that I had many years ago when I had a blog and I would talk about the things that I was working on to use up my stash. This year, I am going to be vlogging about my experience working through some of my yarn stash. This is my hand-dyed yarn stash, but I have some other yarns as well, and I have some really big goals and ideas for attacking my stash and stashing down for the year 2026. So if you want to join me, definitely make sure to follow along and keep an eye out for that introduction video and future vlogs where I share the things that I'm working on to attack my stash. Let me know what some of your favorite makes were from 2025, and if you have any patterns you'd recommend that I work on for 2026. I love getting recommendations from all of you, and I love connecting with you down below in the comments. So definitely make sure to share. I would love to hear anything you want to share with me about the kind of projects that you worked on in 2025 and your goals for 2026. And until next time, happy making. Bye!